Thanks very much, Mark. We can move to the title slide. So this is about how we're tackling our dirty air and what we're kind of putting into our air quality action plan. So next slide, please, Mark. So what we'll be covering is how dirty air affects health, what this looks like in Hammersmith and Fulham, so our current air pollution levels, what we've been doing so far, our draft plan for 2024 to 2029, and what you can do as well. So yes, on dirty air and health. So the fact is that dirty air is bad for our health. We wouldn't drink a dirty glass of water, and we shouldn't accept the same from our air. So next slide, please, Mark. Health impacts fall under a number of effects. So if you go to the first point, please, Mark. Sorry, these load one by one, so there'll be a bit of this. So there are short and long-term effects, as you can see on here. Short-term effects including asthma, coughing and wheezing, but then long-term effects including impacts on stroke and dementia, lung cancer, cardiovascular disease. It also affects all stages of life. We see impacts particularly on children. It can lead to low birth weight after pregnancy and the underdevelopment of children's lungs. Studies in London have shown those in the areas of highest air pollution can have lower lung capacity of as much as about 2 hen's eggs. It's quite substantial. Next point, please, Mark. There are also unequal impacts on different groups. So we've talked about age. It particularly badly affects young children, but also older people, but also those with underlying health conditions as well. So particularly kind of respiratory and cardiovascular conditions. And air pollution is attributable for around 3,600 deaths per year in London, as well as having impacts on people's well-being and long-term health. So this is, sort of a major crisis in London. And the final point to make is that the wealth of evidence that we now have, and there's been a huge amount of evidence that's grown up even just in the last 10 years, so our scientific understanding is moving on a lot, is that there is no safe level of air pollution. So health impacts happen at all levels of pollution. And next slide, please, Mark. Thanks. So the point here is that pollution exceeds the World Health Organization's guidelines everywhere in H&F. And it also exceeds our legal limits around main roads. So the World Health Organization, based on all of the kind of latest evidence, updated its guidelines in 2021 based on impacts on health. And as you can see from this chart on the right, nowhere in H&F in terms of our sort of annual averages is meeting those at the moment. And many of our areas, our air quality focus areas, aren't even meeting the UK legal limits, which are not based on health guidance. So next page, please, Bart. So there are many sources of pollution. So those outdoors include road transport, construction, commercial cooking, domestic wood burning, and gas boilers. And it's worth pointing out that as we sort of begin to successfully tackle road transport emissions, and we're going to see those emission sources from indoor sources growing significantly. And rather incredibly, in spite of the sort of massive access that there is to gas central heating and electric alternatives, domestic wood burning currently accounts for around 17% particulate matter in our skies in London. Next slide, please, Mark. Thanks. So there's also a growing understanding about sources of pollution we're exposed to indoors as well. So we talked about burning solid fuels, so one even eco-certified wood stove is equivalent to about 18 newer diesel passenger cars. So massive impact on health there. Next point, please, Mark. Cooking as well, particularly cooking at high temperatures and cooking with gas, exposes us to both particulates and sort of chemicals coming from the cooking process. So the best things we can do really are to switch to electric hobs and to avoid cooking at high temperatures, and also to ventilate while we're cooking. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a killjoy slide, this one. So we also know that air fresheners, candles, incense and deodorants are also sources of indoor air pollution, as well as cleaning products as well, specialist cleaning products. Smoking, of course, we're well aware by this point of the impact. And then finally, viruses, bacteria and mold as well are all kind of sources of exposure to pollutants inside the home. I think one of the kind of best things that we can do is to make sure that we ventilate our homes well. You can also buy very sort of low-cost air quality monitors as well. If we move to the next slide, Mark. So we can change this. So interventions like the low emission zone have seen a massive fall in nitrogen dioxide levels since we introduced road charging in London. This shows what can be achieved with concerted policy action. And yeah, many we can further this even more with the actions that we can take at a local level, which we'll come on to. And none of this is merely academic either. More action does mean better health. So if we go to the first point, so low emissions zones have been shown to reduce hospital admissions. They've reduced deaths from heart attacks and stroke and blood pressure problems. A study in Germany of low emission zones introduced there have estimated £4.4 billion health savings across 69 German cities. And we know what kind of strain the NHS's budgets are under. So there's a massive opportunity here. And then finally, slightly different from the London context, but a really powerful illustration of the immediate impact on health that reducing exposure to air pollutants can have. The closure of a coal plant in the US was shown to lead to an immediate fall in cardiovascular A&E emissions, which you can see in that top chart on the right. So massive kind of immediate and real life effects. So what have we been doing over the past few years? So cycle infrastructure and support like Cycleway 9, so introducing 2.7 kilometres of new cycle lane, as well as various other forms of support like cycle training or try before you bike hire schemes. We've introduced 2 clean air neighbourhoods in South Fulham that are reducing traffic in those areas. We've been enabling electric vehicles, so we have one of the densest networks of vehicle charging in the country, and we're also transitioning our own fleet as well. So at the moment stands at about 20% of our fleet that are electric, and that's growing all the time. We're supporting low carbon deliveries through schemes like our Parcels Not Pollution service or our free e-van hire. We've been carrying out anti-idling campaigns, particularly focusing on kind of hotspot areas around the borough, like taxi ranks. And we're also launching something called Beat the Street in February, which, yeah, keep your eyes open for that. So that's essentially turning our streets into a big game where you can win prizes and kind of track your progress, compete with others by ditching the car for short journeys and walking and cycling around the borough. So more on that to come soon. So we've also been carrying out we've been expanding our air quality monitoring network. So we now have 6 regular air quality monitoring stations in the borough, and we have the densest air quality monitoring network in Europe, with a variety of other sensors around the borough. We've been working with schools, so by March we will have worked with 30 schools to look at sources of exposure to pollution for children, and we're currently carrying out schemes to introduce measures to reduce the exposure to children in those. We've been partnering with other London boroughs on a wood burning awareness campaign. That's what you can see on the right over there. And we've also partnered with our local Imperial College and Imperial Healthcare Trust in an innovative partnership that's launching this year, and will be helping to engage our residents on sources of air pollution and what they can do to avoid them. So moving on to our draft plan for 2024 to 29. So our target is to meet World Health Organization guidelines by 2035, and also to meet their interim guidelines by 2030. So these are much more sort of stringent targets that are based on health. And how are we going to do this? So first, looking at our developments and buildings, we'll be tackling construction site emissions through our planning policies and enforcing those through kind of dust management plans and on-site inspections. Making sure new developments are air quality neutral in line with our policies. Pushing for zero emissions heating systems as well. So doing this through planning and also through our own work. So our new developments are fossil fuel free that the council is building, and we're retrofitting zero emissions heating into our buildings as well. By delivering new green spaces through planning. And we're also currently consulting on a new smoke control order. So there'll be a link to that consultation, as well as the Air Quality Action Plan consultation later in these slides. And finally, supporting energy efficiency in residence homes and other buildings. You can click that link there if you wish. That will show you a variety of support that we have available, such as our current Winter Ready Homes scheme, offering free draft proofing for residents. Also, public health and awareness raising campaigns. So we're doing this around indoor air quality and fuel poverty, including through our partnership with Imperial College and Imperial Healthcare Trust. Helping businesses to put together travel plans, so supporting around 25 businesses to come up with travel plans to reduce their air pollution emissions in the borough. And promoting information sources to residents as well, and there'll be a few of those later in these slides. So you can look at addresspollution.org to see what air pollution is like at your postcode, set against WHO guidelines. Working with schools, as we've already mentioned above, so we'll be rolling out the recommendations from our school air quality audits. And lobbying and collaborating across London as well, so including with our healthcare and academic partners, but also with other boroughs as well. And then finally on transport and monitoring. So we'll be looking at our own council contracts and operations, so decarbonising our fleet, and also the fleets of our contractors. Planting new hedges and trees as pollution barriers. Looking for new opportunities for low emission neighbourhoods in consultation with our residents. Tackling idling, so doing more of what we're doing at the moment, looking at idling hotspots, supporting walking and cycling, yeah, once again, you'll see a few of the pieces of support available to residents in a few slides' time. Enabling low pollution vehicles, so continuing to roll out our electric vehicle charging and supporting through other mechanisms like our sort of lower cost for parking for electric vehicles. And maintaining our monitoring network, which, as I mentioned, is now the densest in Europe. So what can you do? There's lots that are in our own hands as individuals, as well as what the council can do. So we can divide these into actions that you can take outside the home and inside the home. So looking at outside the home, and get the next bullet point up. So the best thing you can do is, of course, to leave the car at home for short journeys. So we know in London, 30% of journeys are under 2 kilometres, which most people can walk in about 25 minutes. Yeah, do please find other modes of transport, and there are means of support to kind of help you do that. Nobody should be idling, so you can use this link to report idling if you see it. You can use our extensive cycling and walking support. So we've got schemes like Dr. Bike that can fix your bike for free, have cycle training, and you can also hire various sort of e-mobility forms like cargo bikes, and e-scooters, and have a look at our clean air walking routes maps as well. You can also join H&F Cyclists for fun group rides and campaigns. So that's a local group. And as I mentioned earlier, you can check your local air pollution levels against WHO guidelines to get a better sense of the health impacts in your local area. And at home, avoid burning solid fuels, and switch to an electric and particularly induction cooker to reduce those emissions of nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide. Ventilate while cooking. Buy an air quality monitor so you can see for yourself what the kind of impacts of different actions are inside your home. And you can get those quite cheaply as well. And then larger sort of investments that are also going to help with our carbon emissions include switching to a heat pump and installing solar panels to support those kind of electric appliances, which are better for air quality. So finally, please have your say. So do respond to our consultations on the Air Quality Action Plan draft. And you can also respond to our consultation on our new smoke control order as well. So both of those consultations are currently live until the beginning of February. So please do log on and give us your feedback. And if there's any Q&A in the chat, we can see if we can address some of those.
Great, thanks very much, Jim. And as you can see, there's an email address there. If we don't get to your question, or if you want to follow up, airquality@lbhf.gov.uk. I'm just going to put the slides back one thing earlier, because you can click, in theory, click directly on the links that you see in there if you want to open those in a browser window. One of the first questions was, will this be recorded? Yes, this is being recorded, and the Hammersmith Fulham Council YouTube channel has all of the previous climate cafes as well there for you to see in the playlist. So a couple of questions been coming in on sort of different topics. One, sort of looking at the scheme, the Clean Air Neighbourhood scheme, sort of looking at pollution levels, New Kings Road, Wandsworth Bridge Road. Question is about pollution changes sort of before and after those schemes coming in. Jim, do you want to pick that one about the clean air neighbourhoods?
Sure. So our air quality action plan includes all of the actions that the council is taking to improve our air quality, and so that includes cleaner neighbourhoods. This, however, isn't the plan for cleaner neighbourhoods, so I don't necessarily have that information for you now. So the plan for cleaner neighbourhoods was set out at a high level and agreed by Cabinet in October 2022. But each individual scheme is being sort of consulted on, and the data is being sort of collected individually. So there's sort of separate process for that. So any questions or feedback that you've got on any of those live schemes, you can send to cleanerneighbourhoods at lbhf.gov.uk. That's the best place to get information on those.
Okay, thanks. And sort of, in fact, same question. What about the costs of these initiatives? Does the Air Quality Action Plan go into that detail? Is that something that's included? Or, do we invite people to leave their comments in the consultation about that, Jim?
Yeah, sure. So no, it doesn't go into that level of detail. There are various sort of grants that the council applies for to deliver these initiatives. So we've put in grant bids recently for funding from DEFRA and the Mayor's Air Quality Fund. A lot of these actions are also funded from our sort of general funds as well. So although the actions are sort of brought together in our air quality action plan, they're actions that sit in transport or in our sort of corporate property team or our sort of procurement team. So they sit at various places around the council, and a lot of them are kind of funded through those general pots that we've got. But we also sort of bid for further funding as well. But no, that level of detail isn't set out in the plan.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Another question there is picking up on the topic of school streets, where roads outside the school gates are closed to motor vehicles during the drop-off and pick-up time. There's a bit more detail in that, including how there's 600 across the capital at the moment. So what's H&F doing to implement these? Perhaps there's something I can answer, which is that in the last quarter, so during the autumn term, we began an engagement programme with schools in the borough, and we are looking holistically, so not only at school streets. We've got air quality audits on quite a lot of the primary schools in the borough. We're using those to go and have conversations with the schools. Part of the conversation includes and will include school streets, but we're looking sort of at the bigger picture as well, other measures like air pollution barriers and such to improve the environment for the children at the school, but also looking at the local neighbourhood as well. Hopefully that answers the question. There's a couple more that have come in for the last couple of minutes. Question about emissions and size-based parking permits. Is that something on the radar? Is that mentioned in the plan?
So our emissions-based parking charging was brought in a couple of years ago. Size-based charging, perhaps there's someone in transport, our transport team, perhaps Massim, I don't know whether you'd be able to comment on whether you know whether that is being looked at.
Perhaps while we wait, there's also a question that I missed. So quite a few questions coming in, so I've not been able to see them all. Talking about sort of idling, anti-idling campaigns, the sort of social costs. What about popularity? Asking residents to snitch, and when it comes to anti-idling data. Jim, do you want to sort of take that and sort of
Sure.
about the general approach of the council towards these schemes?
Yeah, I mean it's yes, it's tricky and it's a sort of trade-off, isn't it? But idling is something that is against the law, and it's we shouldn't be doing it. It's, as we've kind of seen from the slides previously, it's totally sort of injurious to health, has particularly terrible impacts for some of the people who are most at risk in society as well. Very young children and those with underlying health conditions. And it's not something that the council alone can tackle. We're not everywhere at once. So yeah, I completely appreciate the sort of risks of encouraging people to snitch on each other. But I think in this instance, if it's something that you believe is wrong, then that is the way to call it out.
Thanks a lot, Jim. I realise we're running out of time now. I think one thing to say is I can see there's a large number of people on the call, and it's really great, really encouraging to see that there's so much interest in this topic. So we won't be able to address all of the questions here. This is more sort of an information session and a call to action to get you involved and participating. If you want to leave your comments and your views in the Air Quality Action Plan, now is the best time to do so. If you've got more sort of detailed questions, do drop them to airquality@lbhf.gov.uk. But I think we will leave it there for everyone to go and have their lunch. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along, and let the dialogue continue. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.